the Domino Kings.
Yeah.
We have Brian Capps, Les Gallier, and Stevie Newman. So, come on up.
Don't eat too much. We don't want you falling asleep.
Hey, Bob. This house sound is kind of distracting.
Already working on it.
Well, my name's Stevie and we're the Domino Kings. As usual, we like to start 15 minutes late and unrehearsed.
Our time.
Yeah. We didn't really know what we need to do when we got here, so we decided to just come and see. But we appreciate y'all having us. Is it not, Carrie?
You're carrying that.
I can give you back.
Oh, we're gonna be passing it back and forth. Is that the butterscotch mic? And Les is gonna start us off this afternoon. Go ahead, Les.
The butterscotch mic, it either smells like butterscotch, one of the two. Sorry.
Don't forget about the buffet.
We're going to have, we would love to have questions from the audience, and that'll get us going pretty
Yeah, we'll
good.
just make it.
I suppose I do want to, I was thinking about, well, what's some of my fondest memories? Yeah. During our road years, a lot of traveling, I think my fondest memory is that one night when I had a hotel room all by myself.
The question is, we froze to death on the road.
That's Brian on list, by the way, in case.
No, yeah.
Well, what's your question? Bob, back you in the back.
It's Dick, but that's okay. One syllable will work. Am I hallucinating, or those early Cully's gigs were so weird? Did you guys have a different drummer first?
Yes, we did. This is the second original version of the Domino.
Okay, I thought so, but it got pretty weird there in Cully's. So. I was wondering why they didn't have chicken wire in front of you guys.
Yeah, a buddy of mine I went to school with, a guy named Rod Howe, was the first drummer in the trio, the Domino Kings. And how that all came about, summer of '93.
Oh, my God.
Summer of '93, we needed a guitar player for a class reunion party in Lebanon. That's what it was. And I came up, knew a girl that worked at Sounds Great.
Amy Foster.
Amy Foster,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And went in there and I just told her, I said, I need to find somebody to play this class reunion party. And she said, I know the perfect guy. She said, this guy is an absolute jerk and you guys ought to get along great. That's what she, anyway, she said Steve Newman, gave me his number, and I called Steve. And I think we met at Two Guys Music, didn't we? There in Lebanon, is that where we
Somewhere around there.
where we rehearsed at? Anyway, and it wasn't the Domino Kings per se. It was some other guys I played with. But Steve had mentioned after that, he said he had an idea in mind to do a trio and asked if I'd ever consider playing bass. And I think I bought a Fender. Is that how it was?
I'm sure whatever he says is perfectly correct.
That's the way I remember it. So anyway, yeah, so that's how all that happened, and Rod Howe was the first drummer and all that.
And I was with the band a couple of times for a couple of years.
Yeah, he played about a year and a half and then quit.
Yeah, and then there were some other drummers,
Mhm.
and then Rod. And then I met Les through Don Ships. Don wanted to do a blues band, kind of a review where everybody was a front man. And Les was the drummer that Don picked. And I was the guitar player. pretty sure I was his third or fourth choice. But I think the other guys already had a paying gig, or maybe he thought, you know, I probably worked for quite a bit less than the other guys, which was worth it, looking back. Because those guys taught, you know, they taught me a lot. And so, you know, while I was doing that, the band kind of formed. And when we got a chance to get Les on drums, well, we did. And we had an album that we were going to record. And Les joined the band. It was 97.
Late 97.
Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 days before we cut the record.
Yeah.
Which we didn't end up liking at all, but not because of the drums.
Was that in Knoxville?
It was in Knoxville. We didn't like the production, and we came back to Springfield and took it to the studio to see if Lou could fix the EQ, which is how we met Lou. And, you know, Lou did what Lou kind of did. He said, "Oh, you mean like
You don't want that.
you know?" And well, gosh, let's just do the whole record here, you know. So we ended up. That's how we did our first record. The second time was here at the studio with Lou, and that was with Les.
I'll never forget Lou's face when I walked in there and said, "I want to play this suitcase as a bass drum."
You don't want to do that.
Lou, here's Lou. Les, that's just a novelty. Forget that.
Yeah.
Well, we ended up using the suitcase, and he actually he liked it and sounded good. So
The whole first record is the suitcase. Yeah, that's right. The second record is a drum. Sorry, but the first record is the suitcase.
What's the name
I saw a
of
guy
the
play that in Memphis.
The first record is Lonesome Highway,
Is
and
it totally out of
that
date?
came out. That didn't come out until '99. That came out in '99. Right after that,
I quit my last real job after it came out.
that's right. That's right. And I got fired from my last job. That's actually true too.
The suitcase came from an idea, saw a guy in Memphis. Saw a guy, went down to Memphis in, I guess that would have been '98. And they had, down at Sun, they were having a festival or something, and they had the street blocked off. And they had Malcolm Yelvington.
Oh.
Remember Malcolm Yelvington? Malcolm Yelvington had he did a version of Drinking Wine Spodioti, and he's the only guy, he's the guy that had he was the guy that had the record between Elvis's first two Sun records. You know, number 209 was That's All Right Mama, and number 210 was Malcolm Yelvington, Drinking Wine Spodioti. Anyway, Malcolm was playing down there, and they had a band that was set up, and the drummer, I don't even know if he had a snare drum, but he had this suitcase, and he had some other stuff that he was beating on, and then he had a rope that he tied everything together with, that held it on the flatbed trailer. And I got back, and I told Les, "Man, you gotta try that." Well, Les said, "I think I got a suitcase."
That was actually in addition to Les's kit. Right after he joined, we ended up stripping down the band and Les's kit for quite a while. His entire kit was a snare drum. He didn't even, you know, he borrowed a folding chair from the club and a pair of brushes, and I used what was essentially a student amp, just a tiny little amp. And Brian, that's when he started playing upright, and again, a tiny old amp. And, you know, made for y'all to talk over, you know, in a room like this. That, yeah, and yeah, for a little while we used one mic, and it wasn't it wasn't exactly the gimmicky trick thing, but at that volume with that sound, because on the rare occasions we rehearsed, that's how we did it.
That was our favorite.
Yeah, it wasn't that we were against rehearsal or we thought we were too good, it just never really came up. We were lucky to, well, I mean, our first rehearsal, I was playing with these other guys, in a band called Fatback. I was it was weird, and somebody had mentioned earlier, about having chicken wire. When I started at this place, it's called the Double Deuce, and there was chicken wire in front of the stage, and it got torn down in a fight, and they never put it back up, and that's where I started. Now I might have been 21 by then, but I wouldn't have been but barely old enough to get in a bar, and I was the only white guy in the band, and I was the only guy under about 55 or 60 years old. And we went in this, total redneck joint every Monday and played blues for people that hated these, for no reason. For no reason. There was a fist fight every night, and that's actually where the name the Domino Kings came from, was Alonzo Bird. He's dead now, but Alonzo with L.L. Smith, and y'all remember L.L. Smith? He's a good drummer. And Ernie Ray Bedell. Yeah, and they put up with me until I could find the downbeat, and it took a while. It was that was the other side of rhythm for me, and it took a minute, but it came, and that's where Brian got the nickname White Toast.
Yeah, Bert.
It was Bert.
White toast.
And so, when we started, Cully's was the only place in town that would touch us, because it was a rugby bar, and there was probably going to be a fight in there anyway. And they would let us come in there and play too loud, and Ken never one time told us to turn down. He did tell us to get out. Yeah, he did say, I'm not going to pay you. Don't ever come back. But he never told us to turn down. And tell you what, that'll spoil a young band. I mean, we were.
This is pre-Les.
Yeah, this was before Les. This was with Rod, and there were,
Well, there was a difference with the sound too, because it was like a 180 for you, because you were playing that big old super reverb.
and usually another amp. Just turn on 10. That was sound check. And it wasn't just to be a jerk. It's that kind. I like that sound, and that's the only way to make it. So, you have to just crank it up.
We had the plaster was falling.
The plaster would fall. Yeah, it would just fall down.
Shake.
Just a point of reference, I remember Les, when I first met him at Fernando's, he brought in a suitcase and started using that as a bass drum, because the bass drum we had wasn't very good, so we stuck a mic on there, and that's when he started using it.
And it works fine.
Yeah.
That was 1994, 93, 94,
Did
something
you do
like
that
that.
early?
No. I didn't start the suitcase till after that, I remember.
Well, we used it, I remember we used it one time, you kind of looked at it like, what?
I don't remember that, but I do remember all those jam sessions at Fernando's.
Then the guy brought in the wash tub and played with the string on the stage.
Yeah. Whole different story, let's not go there.
Remember that, Dan?
Well, when we started playing out and having some success getting booked for nothing at places far away, we would go and maybe play these festivals, and be this giant rock and roll stage, where you kill yourself if you fell off the front of it. And a quarter mile deep and everything, and we'd set up like this. We always tried to set up where we could reach each other.
Well, you can feel the
yeah.
hair on your pant leg.
Yeah, and Les would come sit down with that suitcase, and they just have that sounding like Thor's hammer coming at you, you know, boom, and you get to hear it across the building. And it seemed like the most unnatural and hilarious thing in the world. See Les sitting there going, on a suitcase, a little Samsonite that's just shaking buildings across the way.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, I bet it was. Then they turned my amp out of the PA.
Yeah. That was unnecessary.
Well, there's going to be a lot of there'll be a lot of things we would talk about if we knew that you wanted to hear about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Unless you guys had the executive bathroom down at Cully's, how was that a regular bathroom? Holy shit, I've been everywhere in the world.
It was a sticky floor, wasn't it?
I just didn't want to fall.
I don't think I was ever in that place.
There's a dumpster out back.
If we weren't, that was the other thing, Ken never allowed us to use the indoor facilities.
You did have the executive one then.
Yeah, we had the executive one, the dumpster there.
How about Europe?
Yeah, it was, we had a good time there. Now, Brian and I actually went at different times with different bands.
I didn't go to 2010, so.
But we had a good time over there, and people over there still listen to music and are still passionate about music. And they don't care to go to shows. They don't mind, they don't mind standing in a crowded place and enjoying music. They like it there. It's just a different, obviously it's a different way of life. It's just,
Amsterdam.
Yeah.
well,
Don't tell.
Don't tantalize this man. Tell us the story.
Oh, just we played at a nightclub in Amsterdam in between festivals in France and Holland. And we walked in and the sound guy was
Oh,
an
yeah.
American guy. Hey, how's it going?
yeah, he was the gourds engineer. And I guess that's what he did when he was off the road with them, go over and run sound in Amsterdam. Pretty good gig if you can get it.
I had a question about your upcoming, what you're touring this summer, or what you're doing, if you have a record coming out, what's going on in the future with you guys?
Well, we don't know. We do have a record in the can. We've had one ready.
It's 2012.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, yeah. We're not 100% sure where it is right now, but we know it exists, and it's finished.
On Blues Productions?
Yeah. It was a Lou deal.
He wanted to set us up in the room together.
Yeah, we did. We ended up doing the whole record in the room
Pretty
together.
much,
Yeah.
pretty much like.
Yeah, I mean, with overdubs, obviously. It's not a live record, but it's the first one that we had done completely in the same room in a while. And we just don't know. We do have it ready, but we'll see how the timing works out to where we can all do it at the same time. That's really what it boils down to. When that happens, a label will be willing to back a band that will tour, that can tour. Unless we put it out ourselves, and we haven't ruled that out either. We may get tired of waiting on ourselves and other people and just do it ourselves, We don't know. We don't know.
It's a good song, though.
Yeah, I was happy with it.
I do think it's probably the one. I do think it's our best work, and I hope somebody hears it besides us someday. That's all we ever listen to in the car.
That's all Mike said. Don't you get tired of listening to yourself?
Where is this damn good?
Melinda?
Are there still any copies of Lonesome Highway floating out there anywhere? I had the case for it, and I think your brother
I can burn
actually
your
has
copy.
the
I can
disc.
burn your copy.
Oh, I got one right here.
They had
Sign it.
they had a burning at the Baptist church.
Yeah. Well, you know, we had talked about, you know, posters, memorabilia, that kind of thing to bring.
I should have done.
I don't have that stuff anymore.
What happened?
Oh, you'd have to ask one of the. You'd have to ask one of the ex-wives. I'm sure it's in a better place now. But I still remember it, and when I forget it, I probably won't care. So,
I have copies of or one copy of Entertainment Weekly and USA Today. We got write-ups in at 3 or 4 stars. I should have brought those for everybody to look at.
oh, you still have some?
Yeah.
We rarely speak to one another.
I tell you, these guys too, they always had my back whenever I'd get roosted up and maybe had too many drinks, loud mouth. My favorite story to tell, and it's not my proudest moment, is that the Springfield Brewing Company,
This is how they all start out.
and we had a friend of ours who was bartender, a crazy little guy. What was his name?
Jeff.
Jeff.
Jeff
Jeff Shin, yeah.
Oh, there it is. Anyway,
Lenny
he
Squeak.
anyway he kept bringing these trays of shots of Jack Daniels, not just like one each, just lined up, all in front of the stage, shots and shots of free Jack Daniels. So I'm there, oh, free drinks. So started pounding them. By the end of the night, I walked my girlfriend to her car. I turned around to go back and start tearing down my drums, and the door was locked. I just started pounding on that door. Hey, open up! And one of the guys that worked there was outside. He comes up behind me, puts his hand on me, says, "Hey man, quit that, man." And I turned around, grabbed him by the shirt, and I went, "Bleepity bleep, you're gonna why bleepity bleep, you bleepity bleep, I'm gonna bleep 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 you up, man." This is all I remember. Well, I ended up on my back on the sidewalk with a cut lip. And the word got back to Stevie and Brian that, hey, your drummer's in a fight downstairs. And they come flying out of there, and they're just going to take care of business with this guy. And by the time they got down there, I had my arm around the guy, grinning, pink teeth, grinning. Let's do it now. And I said, no, all my fault. Thank you, boys, for coming down. So, and we were buddies from then on. That's one of my fondest memories.
Yeah. I got a story that
See what a life of music can do.
I haven't
Steve.
drank Jack Daniels since, by the way.
Well, yeah, you have. Yeah, you have a couple times.
Just didn't know it.
Yeah. Steve told me, one of my favorite stories, Steve told me this, I wasn't there, but at Hoover Music Company, music store, Hoover, yeah. Everybody knows where Hoover is. By the way, we lost Bob Wooten yesterday, who was Johnny Cash's guitar player. He replaced Luther Perkins back in '68, and
My other favorite
yeah,
guitar player.
yeah.
Luther Perkins and Bob Wooten are both, they're my two favorite guitar players of all time.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
No clue why,
yeah.
but they sure are.
Were you sitting there? Were you testing a delay pedal? Is that what it was?
Oh, it's one of those guys.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Steve's in Hoover playing Boom Chicka Boom over and over again, and
Well, you know, that's how it goes.
and the guy comes up that works there, an employee. I don't know who it was, but I guess main name was. But he said, "Started in on you. You didn't really just kind of came up, didn't you?" And he said. Johnny Cash couldn't sing his way out of a wet paper bag, and Luther Perkins couldn't play a lick, and just on and on and on. Steve finally said, "Yeah, but they never had to give guitar lessons." I guess that was the end of that story.
I just remember something else funny happened down in Texas. This guy comes up and says, while we were playing in between songs, comes up and says, hey, you guys play any Katie Chesney? We said, well, he doesn't do any of our songs.
How about Mark David Manders?
Oh, no. I wish you wouldn't.
Okay.
No, Mark David's a nice guy. He is. They're nice fellas.
Yeah.
But, no, where am I gonna tell that?
Any more questions?
No.
Where's the
Another
microphone?
one.
Yeah.
I'll tell it.
After the story, but I want to know, I've kind of forgotten who all actually did the writing of your original songs.
Well,
Was that mixed up?
I wrote a few, these guys.
Les has 3 on the newest one.
Yeah.
I think actually,
There are 4.
the newest one is everybody's got 3, and then we did an instrumental.
Is that what it was, 3 or
I
4?
think so. That's what we ended up picking.
But we cut 4.
Yeah,
We
we
had,
cut 4.
yeah,
So there's some extra ones out there
yeah.
if we disappear.
Stephen, yeah, the first one we had like, how many songs were on the first record?
You know, I don't know,
You
it
had-
seemed
you had my mind
like a lot.
14.
All of our songs, especially the early stuff, you know, and we really did like old country music. And it's a concise form, you know, 2.5, 3-minute songs. And you know, and you never think about this until later, like when you're trying to get an album to be more than 18 minutes long. And you go, golly, we got 20 songs on there. We gotta go back. I thought I was gonna like this, you know, this is no fun. But yeah, our records don't tend to be, you know, grandiose and epic statements. That we kind of get in and get out. Yeah, yeah, and that's not to say that we're not going to stretch out when we play out at the club, but you know, man, there's just such a directness to this form of music in particular, because there's not much going on.
It's one dimensional. Oh,
Yeah, it sure can be. There's just not much there. So you have to convey the idea of the music, not just the song, not just the melody, and not just the story, but the whole thing has to come on this train that's doesn't really have much of an engine, and it doesn't really have much for cars. But you got to stack something on there that somebody can relate to.
Well, Air is the 4th member.
Right.
You know?
Right. And you know, that's the thing, is you got to be doing something. And so a lot of trios that get hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to show the world how much we can rock. We got a trio. We don't need anybody else being like all this blah, blah, all this noise, all this crap, and it just sounds like 3 guys building a house real fast, you know, and it never lets up. And if everything is so over the top, nothing is. So if you get up here and have everything going, you got nowhere to go. So if you can sound like you're capable of more than what you're going to do. Yeah, you know, when you get that air means something. When it breathes in, when you get that vacuum there for a second, that's where the push and the pull comes from, and that's what makes this type of music sound like a train.
The motor, yeah.
It gets to breathing, it gets to moving. And then you have to tell your story, but you still don't have much to put it on, so you got to get in and you got to get out. Otherwise, people are going to be bored, because we don't, you know, most of our songs, I'd say our most complicated song maybe has 5 chords in it. Maybe.
Well, I remember in the studio, I was guilty of just playing too simple. And after it was all the recording was done, we're getting ready to mix it. Lou would go, all right, let's go back all the songs and add some crash. So, And that, Lou had great ideas.
He also said, he said, you don't need to approach a solo like you're throwing a brick through a glass window.
That's what he always accused me of doing, yeah. Yeah, I was a lot worse about it when I was younger, playing too hard. And I get, my hands get excited, and I don't have a very good touch. And I squeeze too hard, and I hit things, you know, and I don't really notice that I'm doing it, but then you listen back and go, well, that seemed a little bit striking. That might have been a little harsh, you know. And Lou was very diplomatic, but
So you're not mad, are you?
yeah, he could get by with, you know, he could get by with saying some shit, because he was so good natured about it, you know. And you would maybe work on a solo and think, man, I have nailed it. That's what that's supposed to be, you know. And he would say, you know, he would sit there with his fingers for a minute and say, well, I know 3 things. You can't smell your own breath. A sack of flour will make a big biscuit. And you don't want to keep that solo. I broke a couple of guitars. I'm leaving. And I'd go out and go down and get a cup of coffee and come back on. And then maybe get it the first or the 20th take. Yeah. Luke could diffuse a lot.
What's your favorite venues? What's your least favorite venues?
Our favorite venues. Well, as far as, well, I don't know. I kind of like all of them.
I like the smaller rooms.
Smaller rooms, yeah.
Smaller stages.
Lower ceilings,
Yeah.
you know, the older clubs.
Those rooms like that definitely fit ours. It's easier to fit our sound into it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Again, when we play festival stages and we still set up real close. We don't, the visual thing is pretty secondary. Another thing that Lou always said that sticks with me is, can a blind guy dig it? That makes perfect sense for music, you know. And so, you know, we don't really practice our dance moves. Yeah, my hair's natural.
All that reminds me of another story. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Okay. I'm anxious to hear this myself.
I think it was that same night at the Brewing Company. Stevie, during the break, well, he'd go out and talk to people in the audience. I think it was that night, it might have been a different night, but he was telling people that, hey, you know that drummer up there? That's not his real hair. He's wearing a wig. And I didn't hear about this till weeks after that. I thought, you did what? Said, get all those people here, I don't want them to tug on this.
Let's always had a pretty nice mop.
Yeah, when you're not listening to your own recordings, what else do you listen to?
That's it.
Oh, wow.
I listen to a lot of Ry Cooder.
Okay.
Blake Mills. I like guitar players, but I also like piano players. And I like pretty much everybody that's good. But the guy I've been listening to lately, his name's Amund Marud. He's a Norwegian guitar player. It's just a rock guy, but he's really good. So that kind of stuff. And sometime, you know, tomorrow it'll probably be, you know, the Carters.
I couldn't single out any artists right now because there's such a long list, but of late, in well, the last year or so, I enjoy getting on YouTube and finding unknown guys.
Yeah.
And who's this guy? This is really great.
Yeah.
And it's usually from the 40s or 50s that I do find this stuff I really love. And the older I get, the older the music is that I love.
Yeah.
It won't be long, I'll be listening to 20s.
Oh, man.
He's Johnny Cash guy, of course.
Yeah, that's a whole different deal. That's not
I've
even,
heard everything he did.
yeah, that's not even listening to music. That's
Right,
that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, that's,
Magic Sam.
yeah.
Been listening to Marty Stewart a lot lately. Man, that guy he's in his stride now. They're, every
His whole
record,
band's fantastic.
every record that comes out in the last few years is better and better. Well, he's got a band now. That's the difference.
Yeah,
You know, he
it's a
has-
team. It sounds like an engine.
Yep.
Everything about that music does that. Everything about that music moves somewhere and it goes up and it starts at a different place than it ends. And it's higher.
Their new album,
Everything makes you feel better.
Mike Campbell produced this new one.
That's probably-
This Way Out West
yeah.
came out a few weeks ago. It's fantastic. If you
Those
get a chance
guys
to hear
just
it.
have it down.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, and then a lot of the old stuff. I love, I don't know, yeah, your Magic Sam, of course, Chuck Berry. I'm thinking about what's all on the iPod. Django Reinhardt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rosetta
our
Tharpe,
van
you know.
is a pretty good place to be on the road. We couldn't go anywhere and hear better music than our own cars on the road. You know, that was one of the reasons. And I mean, I still gauge, how far some place is by how many albums it takes me to get there. And no place seems that far away if you've got a lot of good music. Of course, at some point, you got 10,000 records and nothing to listen to,
Exactly.
which is how you end up on the YouTube. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of. I've always been surprised how wide the musical pendulum swings with this band. More so than any other bunch I've ever played with. And we all kind of come from similar yet real different backgrounds. I mean, my background was strictly, man, it was pretty old music, and my folks played music, and their stuff was kind of like.
Old timey.
Yeah, it was like pre-bluegrass, kind of, it was more Stanley Brothers than Bill Monroe. It was mountainish music. My family's from the Appalachian region, and so that music came here with us, But then, having like I said, I've got a musical family. My Aunt Susie is a songwriter. And her stuff is stone cold country, and she's a good gospel writer.
She wrote some songs for
Loretta Lynn, she wrote for Lori Morgan. She wrote Far Side of the Bed. Something else.
What's her name?
Susie McCoy is her professional name.
Where's she from?
She's from.
I've been trying to get her and his mom,
Okay.
Yeah,
but Steve won't do it.
They had a gospel group, and Susie, like I say, she went to Nashville and she wrote songs, and with the gospel trio, Susie and my mother and another of my aunts, they've made, I don't even know how many albums. I started recording with them when I was just turned 16, I guess, maybe hadn't quite turned 16. It was, somewhere like within a month or so of my 16th birthday was the first time I was inside a professional studio, Chapman's up in Kansas City, and we would go up there and record all night. Those old women were studs. They would, I'm not kidding, and all of them have 3 or 4 kids, dragging along with them. And all the kids, my brothers came, my aunt's kids, all them came. And yeah, they'd be have to sit outside in the hallway eating, little daddies. I'd give me some of that strawberry pop, and so, Les's background in music is just a little different, Brian's a little different yet, and yet it's all just the very same. I think we only like the good stuff.
Then what's your background?
Well, my first band was 1964, I think it was, something like that. I'm showing my age, but golly. Anyway, and it consisted of 2 guitars, drums, and a saxophone. There's no bass. And after we rehearsed in the garage, and we need a bass. Well, one of the guitar players just started playing the big strings on the guitar, and that was our bass. And mostly instrumental. None of us we were too shy to start singing back then. But, well, mostly top 40 rock and roll back then, and I played rock and roll. I just loved rock and roll, and I joined a record club, and they sent me the wrong record I didn't order, and it was Hank Williams' Greatest Hits. And what's this? I didn't order this. And my dad was, send it back, send it back. And I said, no, I'll play it. I was sold on Hank Williams. Side 1, that was it. I said, wow, wow. So, country and rock and roll mainly. I have a small collection of jazz records, not much, mostly swinging stuff. But yeah, rock and roll and country's about as far as I take it. Maybe a little folky stuff. That's
Well, aren't you a dulcimer player?
I was born in Tulsa and moved to Missouri in '87.
I was born in Springfield, but my family's from Pomme de Terre, just the next lake up. Way out in the brush.
Born in Lebanon, still in Lebanon, die in Lebanon. Yeah, Lee County. Yeah, same thing as Les. You know, a lot of that old country stuff, and started driving, got my driver's license. I really started liking rockabilly for some reason. That's where I discovered the Morels. You know,
And Brian, by the way, is who turned me on to the Morels.
Yeah, and that was cruising Lebanon, and hard to believe I got to play with them years later. So that was pretty special.
You bet.
And yeah, just all that stuff. You know, of course, Les and Steve are both musicians. My deal is more of being kind of a one-trick pony. But I mean, it works. I'm not complaining with whatever it is. It is. But yeah, we've soaked. I mean, there's just a lot of musical influences. But that with the Domino Kings as a trio, the thing we did early on, it had a rockabilly sound, but it wasn't necessarily ever rockabilly per se, because it was all this different music, and it just happened to be 3 pieces playing it, so that's what made it. And again, I think the Air was the 4th member really pushing that stuff, and really gave it that energy,
Any more questions?
Hey, I just
There you
think
go, Mike.
I think it should be known, and I think Chris started to allude to this, but Les is a national champion as crowned in Winfield, Kansas, of the Mountain Dulcimer, of all things, for this guy.
Well, I thank my brother for that. Got me started on the mountain dulcimer. He built when he first started building, when he built this pretty rough. Hit one of his first dulcimers, 1978. I remember that. And he
I've
gave
got
it
it.
for Christmas.
I have it.
No, not this one.
Oh.
That was probably maybe his second dulcimer.
Okay.
Man, he gave it to me for Christmas. It's 1978, and
So I can play that.
Well, I don't know. Doesn't have all the frets on it. He says, well, you start here, and here's the do re mi scale. And I said, I don't know music. He goes, well, you'll figure it out. Just figure out some chords with 3 strings on it. So I did. Started finger picking it, and figuring out chords. And I thought, well, that's kind of neat. And I'd hung it on the wall. I said, man, it looks good hanging on the wall. But it wasn't until years later I said, hey, there's something to this instrument. It sounds beautiful, and I ended up getting a better one. Gary built all the dulcimers that I played, by the way. And he taught me how to build them, and that's how I got started. He went to Winfield and won it in '87. And he goes, Les, you've written some songs on the dulcimer. You should just go play your own songs in the contest. The judges won't. If you make a mistake, judges won't know it because they don't know the song. All right, I'll try it. I got like I won it. I fooled those judges. And then Gary went back and he goes, you have to wait 5 years after you win the championship to re-enter. After 5 years went by, Gary says, so you're going to go back and re-enter? I said, oh, hell no. Contests, that was nerve-wracking, and I'll never do that again.
Bragging rights there.
But, yeah.
quick story.
Oh, boy.
Way back when, about 1959, I was doing a recording session, and the drummer of that session, a guy named Hal Blaine, some of you might know, gave me some of the best advice I ever got, and that was, don't ever play or perform in your own hometown, period. He said, because everybody will have high expectations, and you'll never meet it. And so, a guy named Enoch Morris, who was in charge of the Juanita K. Auditorium, was always asking me, because I was working in Missouri State, I want you to perform, I want you to perform. And I would always say, no, no thanks. And then finally, he beat on me so much, I said, well, if you can come up with some sort of a deal where people are invited to wear t-shirts and blue jeans and eat barbecue, maybe I consider it. You know, sounds like I'm kind of uppity, but anyway, I was going down, you know, blue jeans and t-shirts, and he came back a week later and said, well, I got something we're going to call blue jeans, barbecue, and something whatever. Yeah. And the first one was with me and Big Smith. And I had met Stevie when he was working at a photo shop. It was like Ace or something like that. And
ABC Pictures.
Yeah, and you ran out and had your Gibson 175, and I was immediately impressed. That's my favorite guitar. And we kind of hit it off. And so I said, what do you play? And he showed me a few rockabilly licks, and of course I was rockabilly and early rock and roll. So I snuck in and watched these guys a couple of weeks later, and decided they would be a really good backup band for me. And to make a long story short, I invited them to come over to my house, because I wanted to make sure they knew my stuff. And of course, they knocked it out, because I've got 3 chords, you know, on my side. And they knocked it out. We did it a couple of times, and we went to the show. And I had asked for quite a few bucks for the show, because, heck, I wanted to do something. And after the show, we just split it, whatever it was, 4 ways or 5 ways, I can't remember now, just even. And they were kind of...
Wait, we got paid?
I gave it to Stevie. I don't have a clue. I didn't have to pay the last. But, you know, ever since then, I've told people that was a great moment for me, because I had a bunch of guitars lined up. And when I sing a Buddy Holly song, I have a Strat like Buddy Holly's. And when I sang Elvis, we had a Super 400 and all that. And at least the guitar players out there enjoyed looking at the guitars. But I've always told people that that was the best backup group I ever had. I mean that. And it's a good way. Oh, also, by the way, if I remember correctly, Stevie, you went to South by Southwest and won, did you not, the award for the #1 guitar picker at a sort of a contest, shootout guitar thing? So this man can pick a guitar.
It was a Texas music.
It was a Texas music thing.
And you were
it wasn't really a contest, or I wouldn't have won. I honestly really, it sounds stupid to say, but I really honestly don't know much music. When I learned, and I think there's just, there's a certain point in everybody's life. There's a certain point in everybody's early life where there's just a light that comes on, and you kind of learn how to learn. And there's a window there, and it was during that window that my folks, they didn't care. They all played music, and they're, by the way, fantastic musicians. And it's really the only time they get along. We don't like each other, but it'd be hard to replace them in the band.
That's the
That's the glue, yeah. But when I started playing, they didn't, they weren't forcing me and they weren't fighting with me. I said, I think I want to play the guitar. And they said, we don't care. That's fine. There's one over there. And they said, they literally said that you put your finger here and you hit it and it makes this noise. There's no reason you should be able to do that. And I said, okay. So I went, and sure enough, you put your hands here and you hit it like that, and it makes that noise every time. Every time. And
So, you know, coming from a musical background, it's easy to take it for granted. But these guys here, really, you're not gonna find a better drummer or a better upright bass player, ever, anywhere. And that's just how it is. We had a good time that night, Rob, and that was fun.
Well, one thing I remember is I was doing some Elvis stuff. Another thing that really required some great hot licks, Scotty Moore solos in that. And you would
Well,
jump
Scotty did them first, I just
Well,
repeated it. I didn't come up, you know.
But he jumped on them like you wouldn't believe. I couldn't imagine anyone playing better. The only thing was, he never played the same thing. Every time we practice or rehearse, you do it a little different.
You know,
That's okay, because they were all great. And I'll shut up now, but
No,
you
that's-
can also tell, these gentlemen who are among the best are so modest. It's very refreshing.
Thank you, Rob. I forgot about this too, talking about the early rock and roll guys. Oh, nothing. What are you doing? We had a real nice letter from, I still have it, I saved it from Nicky Sullivan, who was with Buddy Holly and the Crickets. In fact, they were Buddy Holly and were first cousins. And somebody got him a copy of Lonesome Highway, and he wrote us a real nice letter, just telling us how much he liked the sound and everything. And
How well it held his coffee cup.
yeah. That's right. Thought that was pretty good.
Any more questions?
Got any gigs coming up?
Not as this particular group. I think I'm gonna go up to the Lake of the Ozarks and play with Stevie as a duo, is that right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit on one of those wooden things, whatever they call them. I've never done that before. I said, you sure you want me to do that? Cut a home or something. And occasionally, the three of us here will do an early show at Limbur's. We'll work on that.
They played Joe's tonight.
Well, that's right. I host
Yeah,
open mic at Joe's Gathering Place every Monday. If these guys are still in town, come by and we may just play tonight out at Joe's. Yeah.
A question. The guy that did the big promoter that was gonna book you and the Skeletons and the Bel Airs or something to New York City is like 25 gigs?
It was called Big Noise from Springfield.
Oh, that was high, yeah, we were on High Tone Records during
Yeah,
it.
for a minute, but anyway, that he.
On their
he
way
did-
down.
You did your job, he didn't do his job, but I just wonder if you hung him or what happened?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, he's still doing well.
Yeah,
No, High Tone sold to Shout Factory. They have, Gilligan's Island. They're in a bunch of different media, and part of Shout Factory's media machine is shows like Gilligan's Island. They have a bunch of those. Old TV shows, as well as the High Tone catalog and several others. And then I just got a letter last week, they sold to somebody else. So, you know, that was a great time. Sorry.
Sure it was.
That was a great time for the band. We were all together but separate. Brian was pushing his record. He had a new album. We had a new album out. Lou and him had a record out. The Bel Airs had a record out, and we all ended up signed to High Tone for the same 15 minutes. And they said, "Hey, instead of one band going out, why don't all you guys go out and we'll just pay you what we would one band?"
You negotiate that deal, dude.
I'm ready.
But, you know, every night, and it was fun because there were different headliners every night, you know.
The crash key.
Yeah, everybody crashed each other's set. Brian and I probably didn't ever give the Bel Airs a night to themselves. We probably had a little fellowship out of that bottle and maybe jumped on them about every night. But we know more Bel Air songs than the Bel Airs. I'm not kidding. The Bel Airs and the Paladins that was why we started the band. That that was what we had in mind, was something like that, you know? And all of this, Dave is who I went to see my 21st birthday, and they made me wait until 12:01, you know? I had to wait in the vestibule of the Regency. I can hear them, you know, just let me poke, nope. But that's who I went to see, you know, as soon as I was able to, you know, the very, very first time. And we knew all of their songs and just backwards and forwards, and all of their parts, you know. He knows all of Dick's parts, and I know all of Dave's parts. So we're going to try to replace them soon.
Yeah.
No, but they're just one of our favorite bands of all time, and the Skeletons, you know. And we just, that couldn't have gone, you know, outside forces.
The timing was just perfect.
Yeah, the timing, well, yeah. I mean, for us, I don't even know how to say it, but for us, you know, it didn't matter if anybody was there. We didn't care. We were playing to each other.
Chair conventions.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes that happens, especially, you know, you book a bunch of bands through a bunch of college towns where everybody's 50 years old and college is not in session. Going to be some light crowd, but we didn't care, you know, we didn't care. We had a ball every night, you know. Somebody was able to get either on somebody's good side or somebody's bad side pretty much every night. And so there was always that in the van. You know, that was nice to work out a week or two. Yeah. But the way that the shows went, you know, is that kind of what you're going for? I mean, we had a wonderful time. There were some very well attended shows, and we got to play a lot of places that we wouldn't have gotten to play had they not known Lou, you know, specifically. You know, we played in New York several times. Nobody ever asked us to play Maxwell's, but we got to play Maxwell's because we went in there and opened for Lou and them. That was pretty cool. You know.
Steve, did you ever see the original four-piece Galliers?
With Mike Henderson?
Mike Henderson?
No, that was before me, but I did have it on vinyl.
Okay.
I did have, Need Me a Car.
What a hell of a band.
Yeah, I had that on vinyl. I think that went the
He
way
had
of the
one
light.
he had one of the Pruitts on his shoulders half the time. When
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you know, Mike has done a bunch of real good stuff.
Hey, he did
in
Jug
Nashville.
Band, Nashville Jug Band.
Yeah.
He was in.
Yeah, he's been in a bunch of stuff. The first Americana Festival, Mike and Kevin Welch, they have a record label, and I can't call the name of it right now.
Something dog.
Can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the record label, but Mike Henderson is a partner in that label with Kevin Welch, who's just an out of this world songwriter, Oklahoma guy. He's fantastic. And he came out when I was a teenager. He had one song, and I can't even tell you what that was. But it was because it came out right around the same time. He and David Lynn Jones had you know, kind of song. Oh, that's about a semi. That's about a truck. That's pretty cool, you know. And I was just barely at the tail end of that kind of. I say it was the tail end of that kind of country music because there was the urban cowboy dip where nothing happened in country music for a minute, you know. But then it kind of came back with people like Dwight Yoakam, Marty Stewart, Highway 101. These are a lot of people that we listened to when we were kids because, yeah, all of a sudden there is something happening. You know, they are playing music, you know. It's not sissified and it's not just too soft and there's not just too much crap in it. This is pretty good stuff, you know. It kept me from trying for a baseball scholarship.
Lou said, country ain't dead, rock and roll isn't dead, they're just wearing cowboy hats.
Yeah, that's right.
He also said country and cars both peaked about 1966.
He didn't like the Beatles because they took the horns out of music.
Yeah. Lou would say about anything to get somebody riled, just so you could say, "You're not mad, are you?" And then you couldn't be. It's against the rules. That's not how that game is played. Guys, we appreciate y'all sitting around. Thank you for not having anything better to do today. Thank you for the opportunity.